All right, guys. Today is a bit of a long day in terms of like how long the workshop's gonna take, um, and the amount of challenging problems in the workshop is definitely uh, pretty intense today. So I want to get started like right on time. Just before I start, uh, I just want to ask if you guys could upload your photos if you guys haven't yet to LearnDot, because there's a lot of people that are having trouble signing in or getting that attendance survey. So if you get a survey and you fill that out, then it'll automatically mark you as here. But if you don't get that, it's hard for me to. I'm gonna try to learn your guys' names, but it'll just be a lot easier for me if you guys upload like a picture of yourself, so that I can mark you guys as here if I see you guys.
Would it help if we did a check in on Slack?
Uh,
Just a list.
yeah, that we could like figure it out as we go. I think for now the faces stuff should be fine. That might be a good idea though if it gets too burdensome. But yeah, I think I can retroactively if I miss you guys, and I can like retroactively mark you as here if I remember I've seen you, even if I don't mark it. So, but just try to upload your photos.
My photos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mark, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I figured. Yeah, okay. Um, all right, so we're gonna start with loops and debugging today. So this is a very basic but very important concept that we're gonna go over, and it has a lot of applications. So when we start off, it may seem like there's not too much to it, but you can really apply it to many different types of problems, and it can start getting challenging as well. Like, for example, when you nest loops one inside of another, um, which is a use case for solving a lot of problems. So we'll get to that, and we'll get to debugging as well. So usually when we try to solve a problem, we'll get it wrong a lot of the time, and we need to figure out if you have a function and you have all these intermediate values that you're setting inside that function, like let you know let first number equals f or something. You're like setting all these values, and your function is wrong, then you don't know where it went wrong. So debugging is very helpful for us to really break apart that function and see what the intermediate values are at each step of the way so that we can really diagnose where it went wrong. Because if you have a large function, it's kind of hard to figure out like what's wrong with it initially. So debugging can help for that. But you can also use console logs too. There's multiple different approaches. So this is what we're going to learn today: the while loop and the for loop, the break and the continue keywords, and we'll learn about the debugger as well. So a while loop, it can pretty much do what for loops can do. They're pretty interchangeable. There's just certain people that think in a different way to solve a problem, and they might use a while loop. Or there might be certain problems where it's a little clearer to use a while loop, but for the most part, you can use either or. The while loop can be a little more tricky though, and we'll figure out why. But essentially, it requires the while word and a block of code, and it'll constantly run while this equates to true. So what a lot of people why a lot of people like using for loops better is because for loops, it tells you when to break out. You're like and you're doing the incrementing or decrementing within the same parentheses. So it's like impossible to forget to increment or decrement or move closer to the case where this becomes false. But a while loop, if you forget to decrement or increment this value to make it move closer to being false,
It's gonna be
an infinite loop. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot more common to like accidentally forget to reassign some variable, and then now you've entered into an endless loop. And we can go over an example of that. So here, let's see. Can anyone tell me what this would log initially? Like, what would the output be? The first incrementation. Yeah, I think it'll start at 3.
Oh.
Yeah, it'll start at 3, and then it'll go 2, and then it'll go 1, and then it should break out because now at 0, this is no longer true, and then you're done, and you just move down and run the next block of code. But because this is kind of easy to forget, sometimes if you didn't put this, then does anybody have any idea what this would be if you forgot this?
It's gonna be increment number 3.
Yeah, it'll just keep doing 3 over and over. That's why a for loop is nice because you kind of put this within the parentheses. Like you put this incrementing or decrementing within the parentheses, and it's a little harder to forget because you kind of cement it in your mind. Like first thing, second thing, third thing. Like there's 3 parts of a for loop. So while loop is a little more risky, but if you're feeling up to it, definitely give it a shot. So does anybody? Oh, well, like yeah, it's pretty obvious, but this is just blank because it's false. And yeah, I mean, this line is again, it's an endless loop. It'll keep running until we run out of memory. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of went over this already, but this is a very common thing. Happens to me, happens to everyone. You just kind of forget. In a case like this, it'd be a lot harder to forget, but when you have a lot of stuff happening in your while loop, then it's way easier to forget decrementing or incrementing your count. Now here's the for loop, and because it has these 3 cases, you it's a little more uncommon for you to endlessly loop because in this case, you'll always move closer to this condition being false.
So really the only difference between while and for is simply where you put the initialization, the condition, and the while expression.
Yeah.
It's just placement and for instead of while.
Yep. Like all of these are kind of in other places in the while loop. Like this is within it, and then you still have you just have your condition and your initialization. You can do like outside of the while loop.
Yeah.
But this is they're pretty similar.
Right. And is there in terms of memory, does one take up more than the other?
I'm not too sure about that actually. Personally, I think it's pretty insignificant, whatever differences they may be. But I'm not too sure about that. That's pretty like very like micro level type of thing. So yeah. So usually we define our variable in the initialization, and then before every iteration the condition is checked. So the first thing that happens is that middle condition is checked, and if it's true then it'll run, and then after it runs it'll run this part of the expression. So can anyone tell me what this would output into the console? 1 and then 2. Yeah.
3. Afterwards, it gets out of the loop.
Yeah, exactly. Because once it hits to 3, this is true, and then it increments to 4, and then once it's 4, this is no longer true, so it won't even go into this block. 1, 2, 3. So a lot of times, loops are nice, and you can do this with a while loop too, but there's some times where you need to like reverse a string, or there's a lot of like reversal problems where this type of reversed loop you'll find very helpful. So it's pretty much the same thing. You're just initializing this at the end. So if you wanted to reverse a string, you might start at the end of the string and then go towards the beginning and then build up your string like that, like from back to front. And then you decrement the counter here, and then your condition would be at the minimum instead of the maximum. So yeah, like if you ever encounter like something to do with reversing, then it's usually a good hint that we need to start high and then go low. So we can also increment by any number. It doesn't matter what expression. So like you guys might see like plus plus minus minus is the most common thing because usually like we use a for loop to like go through all the elements of a string. And strings start at 0 and the index and it goes all the way to the length of the string. So usually you just need to add 1 or subtract 1 when you're going the opposite way. But you could technically increment by any number. You could put any expression in here. It doesn't have to be plus plus or minus minus.
So if you wanted to do a string, if you wanted to say do every other letter, then you do plus equals 1.
That would be every letter. If you did plus equals 1,
Plus
that would be
plus
every
equals
letter.
2.
Yeah, plus equals 2 would skip an index. What? What's up?
Okay, we'll skip one. We'll skip one index. That's it.
Yeah,
The other one.
exactly. So
As soon as it is, just skips the other index.
yeah, same kind of idea. If you wanted to do every other, then you could do a plus equals 2. Yeah.
You do it like a continue as well. If you do like a skip, like
That's a very good point. Like you could also do like a conditional within the for, and we'll go over continued next. But you could say if the index is like odd or if it's even, then just continue. Else run whatever you want to run. So yeah, you could use a continue, or you could increment by 2. A lot of different ways to solve it. So yeah, this is what we're going to be doing a lot of today is like string manipulation and iterating through strings. And so this is a very common thing that we'll see in all stages of coding. And so it's nice to just get used to iterating through strings. This is pretty standard. It's just, does anyone know what this will log to the console?
It'll log the character, the first character.
Yeah. And then it'll keep going all the way to the end. And so yeah, this is just the index of the string. And note how like it's really clear, like you always want to use variables like this, like current letter or like current index or something, just because if you could put this whatever you want, but being very clear is going to help you in the long run because there's a lot more code under this that references this, and it's really helpful to name it exactly what it is, like be as specific as possible, even overly specific. The continue keyword is for if you, as Mark mentioned, want to just skip running whatever code is under it and just go to the next iteration. So can anyone tell me what this will output to the console?
1, 2, 4, 5.
Yeah, it'll just skip. It won't log this part, so it'll just, when it hits this, it just goes back out and it re-increments and then it continues on. So you'd want to do this for like if you wanted to get a string and then like reduce it down by like every other string. So if you wanted to like remove every other character in a string, then you might like say, you know, if the index is odd, continue, else build up your new string. So yeah, continue is really handy for that kind of thing. So it'll log 1, 2, 4, and 5. It also works in while loops. So this one's a little trickier. Does anyone want to take a stab at this guy? Yeah. Should be all the even numbers. If you guys are not familiar with modulo, that basically means like, is this divisible by 2? So if the remainder, think this gets like the remainder of a division operation. So if you want a quick way to figure out if a number is even or odd, you just if this is even, what would be odd? Like how would you tell if a number is odd? Yeah, if it's not equal to, so you put a little exclamation point here, and then
You could just make the 0, 1, 2.
yeah, I think that
If you bud
yeah,
those
because
two.
it'll always be remainder 1, so you could do that too.
Can you walk me through that code? So if count equals 5, right? But
Mhm.
decrement's 5 so then
If count equals 5, it goes before it even does any decrement. It does this. It'll evaluate this, and then this will be false, and so it'll go here and it'll say
it'll output the odd.
yeah.
It's odd. It's odd.
Oh, was it? Did you say even?
It's odd.
Oh yeah, it's odds. Yeah, sorry. Just had a little. I just kind of blinked there, but yeah, it'll be odds because the evens skip. Yeah, good catch.
So, out of curiosity, even without the continuum there, right? Would that have done anything if it was odd? If it was odd,
So if you take this out, then you would basically you'd start off at 5 and you go to 4, and then you would log 4,
yeah,
and then you would get to 3,
yeah.
and then you would go here, and then you would have 3, 2, and then
I know the fact that it would skip the odd, it would skip the even numbers. So like, would it still work? Would it still be the same even without the continuum? Yeah, yeah.
it might. I'm trying to think right now, but basically, this will just stop this from running. So it'll prevent this from running. I mean, it could.
Well, I
but
guess if you put the console log above the continue,
Yeah.
then you I think that would be the case. But because the console log's below the bottom bracket,
yeah, it would change some way the output because you're like decrementing twice.
Wait, wouldn't this still be even?
So yeah, so like okay, so let's walk through this. Like so you have 5, and then if you didn't have a continue here, then you would this would be false. Actually, sorry, yeah, that would be false. So you wouldn't even go in here, and then you would have console log 5, and then you would decrement it by 1, and so that'd be 4. You go in here, and it would be 3, and then you would console log 3. I know. I'm saying his question was if you took this out, what would happen? Yeah, I'm just running through like with this in, you would skip that and then you would go here. But I was just walking through like what happened without this. It would basically just like run this code and then go over.
So like,
So wouldn't it be even
about the
with the continuum?
You mean what you're logging?
Yeah, because if
No,
the-
because
if
you're
the
only
remainder is-
logging if it's odd. If it's even, you're just continuing. So it's log with the continue in, it's logging all the odds because if it's even, it skips.
So about the
Oh,
continue.
okay. If
Yeah.
even, it skips.
Yeah.
So again, like it is continue. So it's without the continue. Without the continue, right?
Mhm.
You'll decrement it by 3, and that 3 will be decremented down there.
Yeah.
There, right?
Yeah. It'll just without this, it'll just decrement and then run this. Like I don't want to like
I know.
really keep track of everything right now, but basically like the point is that it would run this, and then it would also run this, and then we'd go back in, and then we would check this, and if this is true, it would run this. It wouldn't if we didn't have this, then it would just run the bottom stuff again. That's like the main gist of it. But with the way that this is right now, we're logging all the odds. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little confusing, but this means it's even, and if it's even, it skips. It doesn't log. It just continues, and it skips this whole bottom part. Yeah. So yeah, we're logging 531. Break. It breaks out of the loop permanently. So Does anyone have any guesses at what this guy will do? Let me try to think of it. All true. Okay. Yeah.
Basically, if the grade dot length is 3, you'll break out the room.
Yeah.
But if the tail length will remain true,
Yeah.
you'll keep on implementing that string over there.
That's perfect. So, any guesses at what the value of this guy is? Yeah. It'll go to a plus. So we're adding to the string here. We're adding plus. This is not true. So we just go back. A plus plus now migrates length is 3 because a plus plus is 3 characters. And so we break out and we log. So I guess if you don't need to like decrement or increment or anything if you have a base case like conditional where you break out of your loop, then you don't really need to increment or decrement anything, any condition here.
David, in your day job, are you using for and while loops, or
Yeah.
more so like for each one of those?
For normally, like I'll just use like a lot of like maps and like filters. They're like array methods that are just a lot more common. But I'll use for loops sometimes. Sometimes it's a lot more explicit, like what's happening. But usually like use maps, filters that are just methods on arrays. Or like for eaches. But under the hood, those are all just for loops. Yeah. So like we'll go over that later on, but everything, the foundation of everything is like here. It's just another function that calls a for loop, basically. So it also works in for loops. Oh crap, I went a little too far ahead, but I wanted to give you guys a shot at this.
You already showed the answer.
Yeah, I know, like accidentally hit next, but yeah, this is what it'll output because same as with the while, when we have a break, we just simply exit and we start running the code right here, whatever code's right here. You just
And if the console log was below the brackets, then we wouldn't see the 7, right? Because we'd have broken out. Why did you put 7?
yeah, exactly. So placement is key in these kinds of situations.
Sorry, I don't understand that. Like, as far as the placement of the console log.
Oh, okay. So we can walk through it. So we could say, if you put this here, like let's say you put this down here, like still within the for loop, but you're putting the log after. So you start off at 10. This is not true, so you don't do this, and then you log 10. Minus 1, you have 9. This is not true, so you log 9. Same with 8. And then when you get to 7, you don't do anything, but you can't run the code below this because you've broken out. So now it skips 7, so it just logged 10, 9, 8
Okay.
instead of with 7 because the code stops right there, and then you just break out of this entire bracket and you start running code below that bracket. So yeah, that's pretty much it for like for loops and while loops and breaks. But now I want to get into debugging a little bit, just because. Yeah.
In terms of the break,
It
in this case it doesn't skip 7 because console log is before, correct?
Yeah.
But if it were after it does skip.
Mhm. Because
Then
break,
hit and you break out. It's not
you literally don't run anything else. It's the same as a continue. Like if you continue, you don't run anything below, but instead continue just puts you back
but
up
break
here.
takes you
But
down to
break,
the
it
next.
literally just like breaks the for loop.
when the condition's hit before you break it.
Yeah. They're both pretty useful keywords because, you don't want to do unnecessary work. So like, if you're looking for a character in a string and you found it, so you're iterating through the string and you found it, you should just break, because why go through all the rest of it when you don't have to? So it's like a nice, it's useful. Like it's definitely very widely used.
So just for clarification,
Mhm.
continue is just a loop that continues until you find what you're looking for. But a break is something that actually, once you find what you're looking for, you break.
Yeah, continue is kind of like a skip. Like, let's say if a letter is a vowel, let's say you want to remove all the vowels in a string. When you are building the string, so let's say you go through each letter, and then if that letter is a vowel, then you just continue, because you want to skip that. If it's not a vowel, then you take that character and add it to the string that you are building up. So now you've created a new string from the initial string that has no vowels, because you've used continue. If you use break, then that would be bad, because you just done, like, you, as soon as you hit a vowel, you'll just break the entire for loop and you won't be able to build out that string.
Okay.
Like the for loop will just stop running.
To skip vowels, would you do like if, letter, and then like A or E or I?
You could do that. That's one way to do it, but I would probably use like index of.
Oh, okay, so there's index.
Yeah, there's index of, which says, and we'll go over this, but basically, I can show you guys a little code example, because we're kind of done with the. We have debugger left, but let's see. An index of is basically a for loop too, because it's basically saying like you have your, let's say you have a string of vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and that's a string. So you have your character, and you want to see if your character is in that string. So like Z, for example, you're checking if it's a vowel. You have to go through A, E, I, O, U and say A, R, U, Z, E, R, U, Z, I, R, U, Z. So it's another for loop, basically, under the hood. So like if you had some vowels, and then you just did vowels.index of Z. Does anyone have any guesses what this would be? Is anyone familiar with index of? Index of Z? It would be -1. It's just like, this is something that's just like built into the function, is basically like, if it's not found, basically index of gives you the index of this character. So if it's -1, that means it is not found in there. So does anyone have any guesses what this would be? Yeah, exactly. 0. And then, exactly. So you could check if a letter is a vowel by saying if it's not equal to -1, that means it's in that vowels list. And index of is really just a fancy feature which just does a for loop and loops over this thing and says, are you Z? Are you, or are you A? I mean, are you E? No. Go to the next one. Are you E? Yes. Break out. There's probably a break in there somewhere with the index. That's a great question. So that's why index of takes a second parameter of where you want to start searching. So it'll always give you the first occurrence. So if there's 2 E's here, it'll still be 1. But then if you want to find like that one, then you have to give it a second parameter of where you want to start your search. So if you start your search at 2, then it'll give you 2. Because like you're starting 0, 1, 2, you're starting here. So you could give it another parameter of where you want the search to start. Oh, if you wanted to know where multiple e's in the word, that's a perfect. I like that you bring that up. Then you could kind of like deconstruct. If you don't want to like, then you could kind of do your own index of, like make a function that loops through, and then figures out, oh, is this the first time you've encountered this? Then like, basically you can have a counter, and every time you encounter it, bump it up by 1, and that'll be like your first E, your second E. Yeah, everything just kind of boils down to a for loop.
So why do you put that parameter to the
That's where it starts the search.
Oh,
So if you don't put anything here,
you just gotta get the
it just starts at 0, and it then looks for the first occurrence
Yeah.
from this index of the second parameter.
which is 1, goes at 2, then you start at 2.
Yeah, you start at 2, so it'll give you 2. Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
You have, say, your, instead of it being const vowels, and say it was const paragraph, and you had a whole paragraph, and you wanted to remove you wanted it to return the entire paragraph, but remove vowels or something like that.
Mhm.
How do you,
So it would be the same thing. Like you still need this vowel. You still need the vowels. You still need this string just to tell you if it's a vowel or not. If you want to remove all the vowels in a paragraph,
yeah,
like let's say you had a paragraph. I need my vowels removed, like something like this. Like, and then you still need this. And then what you would basically do is you would do something like for, and then you'd start at 0, because basically you need to iterate through this, right? So let I is 0 while I is less than paragraph dot length I plus plus. So within this, basically you'll say, you need to basically create a paragraph without vowels, and you need to like instantiate it as 0 because you need to make a new string, because strings are immutable, meaning like they can't be changed. Like you can't edit a string. Like you have to make a new string whenever.
You have to increment that length. You have to increment the length. That 30 length string.
Yeah.
Depending on if there's a vowel.
Exactly. So you basically say like for if vowels dot index of, so let's say current character equals paragraph at I. So right now what's going to happen is we'll start at I. Well, we'll start at 0. So I is 0. And then inside here you say current character equals paragraph I, which is, what would that be? What would the current character be initially? I, yeah. So it'd be I, right? So then you say vowels.index of current character. If it does not equal to 0, or if it, let me see. So we're taking out the vowels. So let's say it equals to 0, equals -1. So what does this mean if it equals -1?
It's gonna actually be the next letter below
Or like, what is?
It's not a vowel.
Yeah, it just basically means it's not a vowel. Yeah, because I'm saying it's equal to -1, and -1 just means it's not found within this string. So this means it's not a vowel. So, sorry, it's like kind of hard to, but it's weirdly formatted. But I'm trying to make it big. So if it's not a vowel, then does anybody have any idea what I should do if I'm trying to make a paragraph without vowels?
You would have the paragraph without vowels.
Uh-huh. Perfect. So I'm building it up. So right now, paragraph without vowels will be well, actually, is a vowel. So we won't even go in here, and then we'll go here, and we don't need to put like a continue or like a, well, we wouldn't put a break, but we don't need to put a continue because essentially we are continuing even without the continue. So here paragraph without vowels is just still an empty string. And then we go into this loop again. This is still true. So we get the current character. And what's the current character now? Yeah, it's space. I is 1, but the current character is like we pick the character off of paragraph. So it'd be a space. And so this would now be, does anybody have any guesses at what this would equate to if it's a space? Yeah, it's still -1 because space, we can't find it. And if we added a space here, then it would be false. But there's no space here. So basically, we're adding a space. So now paragraph without vowels is just a space. It's looking kind of weird right now. But then next, it's going to be n. Now, does anybody know what this would be if it's n? Yeah, it'll be true. So, and then it's going to keep going. It's going to skip EE. It's going to add D. It's going to add a space. M, Y, space, V, skip O, add W. And then it should, if I log paragraph without vowels, it should look really weird because it'll have all these spaces, but it should log there's an error here. Paragraph without current character is not defined. So that's because,
I think you have current care. And
yeah, good catch. So it's going to look weird, but we've essentially extracted the vowels right here using this index of, which is a loop within a loop. If you think about it, we're looping, and within this loop, we're looping again. So it's like a hidden nested for loop because we're looping through all of this stuff. We're looping through all this stuff. But then within this, we have to also loop through this each time. So each time we get I, we have to go A, E, I, O. We have to check each character in this. So it's basically a loop within a loop, even though we're using index of. Because index of is just a for loop too, in how it's actually implemented.
And we're gonna like explicitly get to index of and all of that in future lessons.
Yeah. Or like today, we're gonna create this function in the workshop
Got it.
of
So
how
you
this
can-
works under
you
the
can
hood.
take any variable and do dot index of to start counting through the character.
Well, you wouldn't do that. You would just, if you wanted to count through the characters, each character, you would just make your own for loop. Because index of will only give you the index.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that character exists in. So it'll say, if you have vowels.index of E, it'll give you 1. It's not a guarantee that it'll go through each character because once it finds it, it breaks out. So you wouldn't really use it if you wanted to increment through each character. If you wanted to do that, you would just create your own for loop. Are there any questions? If not, then we'll go over the debugger right now. So the debugger is a way for us to help figure out what these intermediate values are. Because let's say this was wrong. Like let's say we had A, B, C, D, F, G, H, or something. And then we were like, oh crap, why is this wrong? If we use something like the debugger, then we could walk through each iteration of the function and see the values at each iteration. So you don't have to do this. Personally, I just use console logs. So I would just put like console log my current character. Yeah, exactly. And I do this all the time. Like, I need to know what value my current character is. I need to know is not vowel. I need to know these values. So like it'll say, oh, current character is I is not vowel true. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. That should be false because it is a vowel. So like that'll point me closer to like maybe this thing is busted. Maybe this if is busted. Because initially when we get the wrong answer, we don't know what's busted. So personally, I throw a lot of logs in. But if you use a debugger, you don't need to log because it'll tell you what the value of each of these intermediate variables are. But it's a little bit more work to set up. Like, I can show you guys the debugger in VS Code. And also, there's a debugger in Chrome itself, like in the browser too. But I personally, the VS Code one is really nice, and I can show you guys it if you guys want. But here, I can just show you guys in VS Code. So this is like a text editor, and if I were to just copy this function, and if I said debugger, yeah. Oh yeah, this is, I forgot it's dark mode. So if I put a debugger here, let me try this. Yeah. So now we know paragraph is I need my vowels removed at this point. And then my paragraph without vowels is undefined because I haven't even like instantiated it yet. So it's undefined. Vowels is undefined. Now I go, this like button hits next. And now my, this should have let me see if I do one more time. Yeah, now when I go to the next one, now my vowels is A, B, C, D, F, G, H when I'm here. So you guys can kind of see how this would be helpful in a way. So now it's going here, and current character is I. So it's like the console logs, but it just does it line by line, step by step, and then you figure out, okay, now I is 1, current character is space, and then so on and so forth. So if you want to do this in your VS Code, I can help you set it up. If you don't have VS Code, that's honestly not the end of the world. Like you can also do this in directly in your browser, but it's a lot weirder personally. So I would just use console logs if you're not going to do this in VS Code. But you could also just use console logs for now. But this is just a tool to help for a really complicated function to like walk through each step line by line.
So is debugger more complex in scope?
Yeah, so here I'm not sure, like, so I think you have to like write the function in this console in your browser, like, so let me see. Yeah, so it kind of does the same thing, but then like, and it shows you here. If you guys can't see it, it's like really tiny, but I really can't make this bigger. But sometimes it'll like go into some weird place because the browser has a lot of code too. I mean, in this case, it's pretty simple. It actually works pretty well. Yeah, this is just in Chrome. But you could do this in Firefox or IE. It all has a console. But I think you have to like paste it in this tiny little thing, and I'm not really the hugest fan of working in this. So I would just either do console logs or try it in VS Code. But yeah, that's the debugger. Are there any questions on the debugger?
So, question regarding the debugger. If you want to debug something in VS Code, you can just put it anywhere within the whole.
Yeah, so just you need to put this debugger statement where you want to start debugging, and then you just press this like little bug thing, and then it'll just start going. So like here.
Now you don't have to put it on top of the very.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter where you put it. That's just where it's just gonna start. So you can put it here.
For VS Code, we have to download the files and stuff, or can we just copy and paste it?
For VS Code, it's just a code editor, so it's like Notepad, Microsoft Word. Like these are your own files that live on your own computer, and you just make a lot of files, and then you like combine them all together, and that's your website basically. It's just like a bunch of files that you just write in this, because this is nice because it gives you like autocomplete, and it gives you all this highlighting for like whatever language you're coding in. If you change it to a different language, it'll highlight different keywords, and it'll give you like, it's a lot more. But you could just use Notepad. You could literally use Notepad if you wanted to go super minimalist. It's just like fancy Notepad.
I was trying to do one of the examples in VS Code, and then I downloaded it and then imported it before I moved it to my desktop, and then I tried to move it to my desktop, and then I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I can help you guys set this up, because again, like I mentioned yesterday, I don't want to get too deep into this because the workshop today is pretty challenging, but this right here is not my browser. So like if I want to run this file, let's say I wanted to run this file, right? Actually, you know how like here, when I click, enter or command enter, I'm running this code. Like this code is being run by the browser. But here, this is just on my file system in my computer, like my laptop. So I need Node, and this is server side code. Like this is the server part of like full stack. Is like when I run Node debugger, then it outputs to my console. But this is all running on my machine. It's not running on the browser. So that's what's meant by like server versus all this code that's running. Like, let's say you go to, let's say you go to a Coke homepage, right? Now, when I click this investors button, there's a JavaScript code that's listening to like my interactions, and that stuff's all running on this web page. It's not even on my machine. So it's running in the environment of this browser, and that's client side, like front end, right? But then if I'm actually running code on my machine, on my computer, then it's like back end or server side code. So that's why if you want to use VS Code to actually run your code in that text editor, then you need to download Node as well. So there's like a little bit of setup you have to do if you want to play around with the code editor environment. But all of the exercises that we do are just going to run on the browser. And so we don't need any setup. It's just the browser environment is like the home base for JavaScript. Before, like 10 years ago, we couldn't even do this in JavaScript because JavaScript didn't have a place for it to run on your actual computer. So that's why it was reduced in importance, because server side is really important too. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the lecture for today. I know I've been talking for a while. The